much, Sam, and yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Before doing acknowledgement or sort of talk about myself, we'll start off and play the first video, if that's okay, please, Sam.
Yep.
Thank you.
Despite laws forbidding Indigenous men from signing up, this unidentified soldier is just one of many Indigenous soldiers in World War I. It's reported that close to 400 Indigenous soldiers served, but it's now believed the number is closer to 1,000.
In 1965, this group of students, known as the Freedom Riders, hit the headlines when they took the struggle from the city to the bush, breaking down the barriers of prejudice and shattering the blissful ignorance of conservative country towns.
I feel that the time has come when Australia can no longer tolerate legal racial discrimination against its Indigenous people.
Anxiety and everything is over. I know now that I am Senator of Honour, as it were, and it's quite a wonderful feeling.
They set up under a beach umbrella right in front of Parliament House.
Force our way through. If you don't move, we will have to move around. Ask you again.
We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments and governments that have inflicted profound grief, suffering and loss on these our fellow Australians.
We're not going to stand for racism in our sport, our game.
And one day I want to stand here and be able to say as proudly and sing as loudly as anyone else in this room, Australians all, let us rejoice.
Thank you, Sharon. Before I get started, hands up anyone that's in on the call today that knew all of the dates that sort of came up through the video. Yeah, cool. That's good. I've never delivered a cultural understanding session or shared that video with anybody who had seen, I guess, or knew all the dates within that video. But before we get started, most of you guys did hear me do an acknowledgement of country, something I like to do every time I share something about my culture, about my people. I'm going to do so again today. I want to pay my respect and acknowledge the people on which I'm working on today and sharing this presentation. That's the Gadigal people of the Darugul speaking nation. Sam, if you could please go to the next slide. I want to pay my respects to the first people who cared for Mother Earth since the beginning of time. Without their care and love for our mother, we wouldn't be able to live in one of the most beautiful countries, if not the most beautiful country in the world. And I also want to pay my respect and acknowledge, the elders who fought really hard to enable me. That enabled me to work and do what I get to do every single day. And I want to extend that respect and acknowledgement to every person that's in the call today, because this week's for NAIDOC. You're good, Sam? Technology's still not on our side. That's all good, man. What Sam's going to do, I'll continue what I'm saying. This year's theme for NAIDOC is, get up, stand up, show up. NAIDOC, the word NAIDOC actually derived from the meaning of the National Aboriginal Islanders Day Observation Committee. So it started off as a day, where we'd celebrate and recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's now moved to a week-long celebration, of our culture. And it's time for our people to come together and really, express our gratitude and happiness, for where we are today, but also how far we have to go. And I think that really ties in well with this year's theme. And I'm really thankful, the IMAA are really, trailblazing, in working with Tonic and also Aboriginal Health Television, getting up, standing up and showing up your support for our business. I'm hoping to see that grow. While Sam's still working on that, thanks. Really appreciate you doing that as well, Sam. But, I'm going to share my family story and I guess the key impacts those dates have had, on every single Aboriginal family, but more importantly, my family directly and also myself. So as you guys may be aware, I'm a Wiradjuri person or a Wiradjuri man. I belong to Billa Galari. Billa in my language means river, and Galari or Kalair has been a lifeline for my people since the beginning of time. So that's now known as the Lachlan River. So my family have roamed, belong to that part of the world since time immemorial. There we go, perfect. And as Sam was getting that up, I wanted to share with you is the reason why we do acknowledgement or welcome to country. As you can see here, this is every single colour, depicts a different nation. Every single one of these different colours have their own languages. A lot of their larger nations have their own dialects. So I belong to the Wiradjuri nations in the bottom right-hand corner, the brown nation there. That's where I belong to. I call home. And, the best way to describe how Aboriginal Australia was pre-invasion and colonisation is how Europe is today. So it's sort of, for the most part, one large body of land, and a lot of the countries have their own languages and dialects. But, with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, where I belong to, I would have, generally known how to speak and interact with the people from the Gamilaroi Nation, the Wiradjuri Nation, also some of the southern nations below there around Victoria. It's a bit how Europe is with some of the customs and traditions and stuff, how sort of Spain, Europe, France have kind of similar languages in Portugal, where if you go over to sort of the Balkans, to the Croatia, Serbia, Macedonia, they're very, very different to Western Europe, but also, they're pretty similar, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. And a moment ago, I paid my respect to the Gadigal people. If any of you guys were there when I gave the acknowledgement of country, sort of talked about some of the landmarks in the city, and also, the hard work that women do, but never ever shy away from that. But sort of, you guys may hear a lot, the Gadigal people, when you hear acknowledgements or welcomes in the Sydney region. I was taught that, that Gul in the Dharawal language means people of, and Gadi is long grass. So Gadigal is people of the long grass. And generally, where that used to be found the most, the long grass is where Sydney Uni is today. So that they were where a lot of the camps were between there and also down to sort of Elizabeth Bay and Laparoos. But Gadigal in that area, sort of where the long grass was, that's why it's called Gadigal, people of the long grass. Could we just go to the next slide? So that video, obviously, some pretty hard-hitting dates or events for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and they had, direct impacts on my mother, my grandmother, my mother's brothers and sisters, and also my grandmother's brothers and sisters, which I'll share with you today. If we go to the next slide, please. So this here is a few images of my mother's family. So the top right-hand corner is my mum and her 10 brothers and sisters. Yep, 10 brothers and sisters. Some of you guys' parents may have the same amount of siblings. That means that I've got 54 first cousins. So I'm right in the middle of all of those. So in the bottom right-hand corner is my grandmother, her name is Frances Wedge. So my grandmother, she was born on the banks of the river. Not long after her birth, they were removed from living a semi-traditional lifestyle and placed onto the Arambi 32 Acres mission, or the Arambi mission, which sits just outside of Cowra in central west New South Wales. My grandmother's moved there with her 14 brothers and sisters, and my mum and dad, they had me quite young, so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and grandfather growing up, which I'm really, really thankful for. I got to learn, a bit of our language, a lot of our song lines, a lot of our traditions as well, and also a lot of their stories, which I carry with me today. My grandmother instilled into all of, myself, my brother, my sisters, and all my cousins, the importance of education, how important it was to finish school. And as when I was really young, I didn't really understand it. As I got a little bit older, she shared some stories with me. And when she was growing up, she had 8 brothers, out of the 14 siblings. And unfortunately for my grandmother, all of her brothers were taken as part of the White Australia policy, and also from the protection board. So they were all removed when they were really young, and they were placed in a place called Domidary Boys Home, which is on the south coast of New South Wales. Nor when they became adolescents, at that time, they were placed to what's called the Kinchela Boys Home, which is on the north coast of New South Wales, and that happened to a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, through that time. And the unfortunate thing for my grandmother's brothers, they lost connection with their family. Really thankfully, they were able to reconnect once they left the boys' home. But unfortunately for a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, they weren't able to reconnect. With my grandmother growing up, although her brothers were removed quite early, from their family's care, she had fond memories of growing up on the mission. You hear a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people refer to missions as to where they're from or where they belong to. That's where they were placed quite some time ago. But my grandmother, she said she loved, walking to school with her sisters and, all of their cousins as well. And that was the only time they were allowed to leave the mission, is if they were going to school. They used to have a permission slip if they were leaving any other time before that. But, the reason why my grandmother placed a really high importance on education to my cousins and I was, when she was in year 4, she was in class, and the headmaster came and pulled her out, and he said, "Oh, Frances, I'm going to get you to grab your bag and come out with me." She said, "Okay, cool." So she grabbed her stuff, walked out to the gate, and the headmaster said, "Oh, Frances, you can walk home." I said, "Oh, why is there my trouble?" She said, No, you don't have to come to school anymore. I said, "Oh, why is that? I love coming to school." He said, "Oh, they're just the rules." So my grandma was in year 4. She was told she wasn't allowed to come back to school. So, she had the long walk back home to the mission. She was quite upset. And when she got back to the mission that day, She was walking to her parents' house, my great-grandparents' house, and how our mission was set up. There's 3 streets. It's called a front street, middle street, back street, and side street. So there's 4 streets. That's still the street names to this day, where some of my family members live. But she was walking to her family's house, and at the front of the mission was the mission master or the mission managers. They were the people who ran the mission. And my grandmother, from that day on, she actually lived with the mission master and their family and worked as a maid with them until she was 16, when my grandfather asked her to marry her. So that happened there. And as in the image there, my mother and her brothers and sisters, she's the 3rd youngest. My mother, she was born in March of 1967. You guys would have seen in the video there the referendum. They talk about it a bit, which was in May of 1967. So my mother was born just before that. So that means, unlike any of us here, when my mother was born, she didn't get a birth certificate. She had she still has it to this day, it's laminated now. It's a little yellow card that states that she comes under the Flora and Fauna Act of New South Wales and belongs to the state as an animal. So, when I talk to people about racism or about, the 26th of January and why, we don't celebrate that day, and a lot of people say, but all the things that happened to Aboriginal people so long ago. For my family, the direct impact was 1 generation ago, some of those decisions that have been made on our behalf without our consultation. So that's something, I guess, that we carry with us pretty closely. And after the referendum, that also meant that our people didn't need a permission note to leave the mission. And I think you guys in Sydney are probably pretty familiar with the Redfern, Waterloo area, a place called the Block. A lot of Aboriginal people in the inner city area. And the reason, one of the reasons why a lot of our people congregated there was because of the rail works or the carriage works, they're called now. And that's, they were the only place that didn't discriminate for employment. So a lot of Aboriginal people, especially once they left like the Kinchela Boys Home for Boys or the Cootamundra Girls Home for Girls, they'd come to Redfern, to find work and employment opportunities. And a lot of the times they were able to reconnect with family, which was good. So after my mum was born, they moved to Everleigh. They actually lived on Caroline Street, so behind Everleigh Street and Redfern were the first families to move there, which, my mum has really fond memories. So in the bottom picture there, my mother's the little girl in the bottom right-hand corner holding some of the signs, really fighting for Aboriginal people's rights. And I'm really, really thankful that my family were the founding members of the Aboriginal Tent Embassy. They founded the first Aboriginal medical service in Redfern, also the Aboriginal legal service. Some of my mother's brothers and sisters, and also first cousins, and also my grandmother's siblings as well. So, I've always had, instilled in me the power and belief that, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we're the master of our own destiny, but it's up to us to be able to enable our brothers and sisters to be able to make those changes. And I'm in a very fortunate situation. I think that's why I work in the positions that I've worked in my whole life, because I feel like it's my obligation to support and assist my people, in creating better futures for ourselves. So my family's fought a lot for civil rights for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and not long, my mum, said they lived in Redfern until just before she started primary school, so they moved out to God's Country. Everyone knows God's Country's out in Mandurah, if you was at the acknowledgement before. So they moved out to God's Country in the early 70s. This when sort of the industrial boom happened out west with a lot of the factory work and stuff, a bit more money to be made instead of working on the carriage work. So, my grandparents moved out there with the 10 kids, and my mum started primary school. And again, the importance of education my grandmother placed to all my brothers and sisters. My mum, unfortunately, when she started kindergarten, she wasn't taught how to read or write. Unlike us, when she started school, she sat behind the teacher, faced the board, and was just given a colouring in book all year, so didn't get the luxury of learning how to read or write. My mum still carries a lot of those literacy and numeracy issues with her today. Really proud to say that she's got an undergrad degree and owns her own home. I did all of her assessments for her, so that's, I don't even have my degree yet, but she's got one. That's sort of, which I kind of say it's both of ours, but it's got her name on it. But she does own a house and stuff like that, so that's really, really powerful as well. And that's why I think, having strong family members around me has really enabled me to be here today. But, growing up out west, if any of you guys are familiar with Western Sydney, it's sort of a melting pot of human beings. A lot, it's very multicultural. And growing up, when I was a kid in Western Sydney, I had 2 best friends. Both of them are still my best mates to this day. One, his name was Eamon. The other's Dennis. The only thing I knew that was different between Eamon, Dennis, and I was that when I went to Eamon's house, his parents only spoke Arabic, and then there's beautiful sweets in the world like baklavas and things like that. And then when I went to Dennis's house, he's actually a refugee from El Salvador, so his family still, Spanish is still the first language there, and you know they have the best barbecues on the planet, beans, meat, rice, tortillas, like really really nice food. But when they came to my house, my parents were always at work, so we'd always have Cocoa Pops. Until we ate them, well, then we'd have to eat the Weet-Bix. I'm getting trouble for drinking the milk. But that's sort of the only cultural differences now looking back that I knew between Amy, Dennis, and I growing up. You know, and in primary school, because you know, you see that my mother went to the rallies. We used to travel all up and down the East Coast, down to Canberra to go to rallies with my family as a kid. I remember really fondly, it was the only time we were allowed to swear. So, you know, in primary school, we'd go down and be, what do we want? Land rights, what do we get? F4 all day. Just was the best. And then sort of got to look by our grandparents at sort of like 7, 8 o'clock. Oh, that's enough now, no more swearing. But, you know, because you know, I was able to go to those rallies and stuff like that. Public speaking was something I was never afraid of. And I was really proudly the first Aboriginal primary school captain of my school out there in Western Sydney. And my family took great pride in that. And, you know, going to school in year 6, I had my 2 best mates, I was sort of friends with everyone, sort of really loved growing up and being around a multicultural area. I was also pretty good at sport when I was young. So I got accepted into a sporting high school to start year 7, which I was really, really excited for. And I know it sounds a bit strange, but sort of year 6 is when a lot of, I guess, my life experiences flipped on its head, or sort of something, you know, really changed my life. It was the second last day of primary school. It's the day we had our year 6 farewell. So if anyone's sort of had one of those, it's like a formal for primary school. And for some unbeknown reason to myself, I wanted to wear a 3-piece suit because my grandfather wore a 3-piece suit every day until the day that he died. So we hired a 3-piece suit with like these fake diamonds on the vest, and I had like a walkie stick, everything. Looked ridiculous when I see the photos, but I remember just after lunch, my name got called over the announcer, Jake Thompson, can you please come to the principal's office? Oh, that's really strange. Why's my name getting called out? So I walk over to the principal's office. My mum's there and I freak out. I was like, why's my mum there? I got really scared. And they laughed. They're the principal, no, you're not trouble, come in. So I go into the principal's office and she said, oh, your mum's going to take you home. We'll see you later on tonight. I said, okay, cool. So we leave and mum said, do you want to put on your suit? Mum was late for everything, so it still is. So I was like, okay, cool, chuck it on. It was a boiling hot afternoon, ended term 4, and she said, oh, do you want to go visit your grandmother? I said, we called her my nin. I said, yeah, for sure. And she passed away early that year, so she was buried in a cemetery near us in Mount Druitt. So we drove over to the cemetery. Sort of, my mum sort of had a little yarn to her, and then she said, oh, come on, let's go now. Okay, cool. So we jump in the car, and my mum started talking about this Catholic school that my grandmother wanted my mum and her siblings to go to. She said, oh, what do you think of St. Agnes, it was called? I said, oh, I don't think much of it. Why? She said, oh, do you want to meet the principal? I said, no, I don't want to meet the principal. She said that we sort of turned into the gates of what now is St. Agnes. So I remember it had the big statue at the front. I remember driving up and I was really upset at my mum. And the headmaster, lovely little principal, lovely little old lady, was sitting there. She was asking me some questions. I sort of had a feeling, I think this is an interview to come to this school. And I remember at the end of it, she was either going to say, Jake, we're looking forward to seeing you, or Jake will let you know if there's enough room at the school. I was really hoping it was going to be the latter. Unfortunately, she said, Jake, we're really excited to have you next year. And I remember looking at my mum, like, I hate you so much. And then went home. All my family came out for my 6th farewell. What I didn't share with you at the start is I was my grandparents' favourite grandchild. I was a golden child, so which in turn made me my aunties and uncles' favourite nephew. Much to the displeasure of a lot of my cousins, but it is what it is. So they all came out and wanted to get photos and stuff with me for my year 6 farewell. And I just stared at the camera like, I hate this. I hate everyone. But I only told my family a few years ago. That's why I was upset, because I never go to that stupid school. But you know, that night happened. And I remember school had finished, and the year 6 holidays between primary school and high school was really, really nervous and apprehensive. And none of my friends from high school were going there. Eamon or Dennis, they weren't going there. None of my other mates were going there. And sort of the sporting teams that I played in, some of the camps we went on, and I said, you guys going to St. Agnes? No. And then, you know, ride my push bike on my skateboard around, go to skate parks and stuff, and asked some of the guys I knew, are you guys going to St. Agnes? No one I knew was going this. Oh, this sucks. So, excuse me. I remember getting the start of school, wear blazer, so tie, jacket, slacks, and my mum gave me brand new leather shoes from Williams, Colorado. I remember they're quite expensive. I'm upset. Got ready for school, and they make you put every single school book in your backpack. And you say 7, I don't know why. So I remember walking, holding this bag to hold myself up, and we go into the hall, and they'd already started putting students in their homerooms. I'd missed the orientation day, so I was just standing at the back. I was the only kid there still with their parents. And I remember looking around, looking for a familiar face. I couldn't find one. And I kept telling my parents, just go. And they were, we're going to wait. So they waited, and they literally called out every single kid to go in a homeroom. The only kid they didn't call out was, guess what? Yep, my name. So I'm sitting there. The year coordinator comes, hey, son, what's your name? I said my name. He said, oh, yep, you're in the last one. Just jump in the back. I said, okay, cool. So I leave, and as that happens, my parents come in and try and hug me in front of everyone. I was like, go away, leave me alone. Don't even look at me, just leave. So they left. And my mum whispered in my ear, she said, do not scuff your school shoes as she left. Yeah, whatever, mum, when she left. So I walked out, I started kicking the ground, trying to hold myself up the bag. And as we're walking to homeroom, a kid turns around and said, hey, man, what's your name? I said, oh, my name's Jake. What's yours? I said, oh, Daniel. I said, oh, nice to meet you, Daniel. And he goes, well, where are you from? And I said, oh, man, I went to Dawson Public School. What about you guys? Don't know where you're from? I said, oh, I grew up in Darrick in Mount Druitt. What about you guys? Don't know where you're from? I was like, what do you mean? He goes, what nationality are you? First time someone had ever asked. So really proudly, I go, man, I'm Aboriginal. I'll never forget this. I was like, he said, looked at me. He's like, oh, are you an Abbo? I said, no, man. Everybody goes, oh, yeah, you're an Abbo. Sort of brushed off the walk around. We never had that before. Whatever. So I turned around, then a couple of other kids, in the home room, oh, you an Abbo? I was like, no, I'm Aboriginal. So it happened through the day. It happened a lot. I remember getting asked, you were born, you're an Abbo. I was like, yeah, man, I'm Aboriginal. It was weird. I was only Aboriginal kid in 7, so I just found it really strange. Happened quite a bit through the day. So I go home after school, and mum's making my favourite meal. And she sort of asked me, oh, how was school today? Oh, it was good. It was good. Oh, did you learn anything? Yeah, I learned heaps. You don't learn anything first day of school. And she said, oh, did you make any friends? I said, yeah, I made a few friends. Didn't make any. And then she said, oh, did anything interesting happen? I was like, no, not really. And I was just sitting there watching TV, and that sort of kept playing through my mind. And at the time, my mother was, she was peeling potatoes in the sink. And I remember walking in to the door of the kitchen. I sort of leaned on the wall, and I said, Mum, what does it mean when someone calls you an Abbo? I don't forget this as long as I live. So that my mother, she dropped the potato, she dropped the peeler, and tears started streaming down her face. And I didn't know why, but I had an empty feeling. I started crying as well, and I walked over, embraced, and we just sat on the floor in the kitchen and cried. And she just kept saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And it, at the time, I sort of realised that this is the first time that I ever experienced racism in my entire life. And it's something my mother faced from the moment she took her first breath, and I think something she'll face until she dies. And we said, then she kept saying sorry, and I said, that's okay, and I felt bad as well. So after that, she said, look, it's fine, let's just keep cooking dinner. And she kept cooking dinner. I sat there, and after that happened, sort of my aunties and uncles started calling us how my day was. Everyone called me their son or their baby, my baby. So I said, oh, my baby, how was school? I was all right. And they said, oh, your mum told us what happened. It's all right, don't worry about it. I said, okay, no worries. And then, that happened all as all my aunties. I said, the 4 first cousins. So my 22 older cousins, 14 of those are boys, and a lot of them, they stayed and lived in the Redfern Waterloo area growing up. So anyone's familiar with that area, the 90s and early 2000s, a pretty scary place. So some of those fathers are pretty scary guys. So a lot of them, when they got on the phone after my aunties and uncles, the first thing they said was, cuz, if anyone gets cheeky to you at school, you flog them, and if anything happens to you, we'll come out and flog them. I was like, oh, all right. I've never had a fight before in my life. The only person I've ever punched is my brother. So, all right, sweet. So I had this chip on my shoulder after that. So I go to school the next day. Sure enough, Daniel, who you ever give me a pen? No worries, brother. So I opened my pencil case, threw the pen up. As he's going to catch it, I just launched over and I punched him in the face. As I said, first time I ever punched anyone who wasn't my brother. And I knew I was in trouble. I was like, man, I'm so much trouble. So I just grabbed my bag and I walked straight to the principal's office. And this was before mobile phones. I remember walking up and the principal, she was waiting there. Oh, Jake, come in, relax, it's fine. I remember her vividly saying, you're not in trouble. We've called your mum, she's going to pick you up, you can go home, settle, we'll have a meeting about it tomorrow. I thought, heck, what's this? I was going to defy I didn't get in trouble. Oh, I was in trouble. Mom drove up the car. She didn't even get out of the car. She stuck her head out the window. She said to the principal, I'm so sorry. She looked at me. She said, get in the fucking car now. I looked at the principal. She didn't even look at me. She just walked away. I got in the car. My mum flogged me all the way home. My dad got home. He flogged me. And I was, you can't go around fighting at school. But the unfortunate thing was, I'd already made up the mind that I'm going to fight fire with fire. And I had this chip on my shoulder. So I went back to school. And I never had a physical altercation after that. But I was always arguing with kids in class. And everything sort of ended with, you're an Abbo. Or you're wrong. And I was the only Aboriginal kid at my school. So I was just like, it was really, really frustrating. I never win an argument, which meant, I was getting in trouble with the teachers. So all of my report cards from year 7 all the way through the end of year 9 was, Jake is a wonderful young man with unlimited potential, but is easily distracted and likes to distract others. And, that went from being school captain in primary school to getting those report cards and getting in trouble quite a lot at school. My parents were really, really upset, especially the fact that they were paying money for me to go to a school and I wasn't doing well. And, that sort of happened through year 7, 8, 9. Didn't make many friends. And as I said, I was the only Aboriginal kid at my school through year 7 until I was in year 10 and my younger brother came. He had a completely different high schooling experience, but it's a story for another day. And And, things sort of changed to me midway through year 9, and my grandfather decided then that's when he'd start my journey in becoming an Aboriginal man, or going through my ceremony to become a man. I'm not allowed to share too much of that, but generally what a lot of that is, through certain times of the year, we'll go camping in certain places by the river and spend a lot of time with the boys and the men in our family, basically just listening to them of Earth and learning about our Wiradjuri culture. So the end of term 3 it was October school holidays. And that was also the same time I made my first Australian team. So I made Australian under 15s baseball team to go to Japan and play in the tournament over there, which I was really, really excited about. And my mum and dad said to me, "So we're not going to send you if you keep mucking up at school." I was like, "Yeah, whatever." But I went camping with my family in the first week of the holidays. I went by the river one day, and it was one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had in my life. And I was sitting there with my grandfather, and we were sitting by the river. It was a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky. And he started asking me, "Son, how's school?" He called me son. He said, "Son, how's school?" I said, "Oh, school's all right, Pop." He goes, "Oh, you've been getting into trouble?" So I said, "No, not really." He just goes, "Oh, that's not what your mum and dad have been saying." I said, No, it's just everyone's picking on me because I'm Aboriginal. I said, "Oh, are they picking on you because you're Aboriginal? Is that what's happening?" I said, "Yeah, Pop." He goes, "Oh, okay." I went silent for a bit. And then he goes, "Son, I want you to shut your eyes." And as I shut my eyes, it was really good. The sun shower started. He goes, "Can you feel those raindrops?" I said, "Yeah, I can, Pop." And he goes, "What I want you to do is I want you to pretend that you're one of those raindrops falling out of the sky and landing in our mother. We call the river Billigalari our mother." I said, "Yep." He goes, "Every single time a raindrop lands in our mother, it makes a little drop. And that makes a ripple. And that little ripple, what that'll do is that'll flow down the river, it'll connect to the Murrumbidgee, and then it'll connect to the Murray, and it'll get spat out at Murray Bridge there at Adelaide, and it's going to go on its journey." That raindrop, it could go to Japan, it could go to Fiji, it could go to Hawaii, but you know what? That raindrop through its journey, it's going to go through some really rough seas, and it's going to feel like it's going to get swallowed up, or it's not going to make it back to where it belongs. And that's sort of like what you're going through right now. Does it feel like that? I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Do you feel like sometimes you're so overwhelmed with emotion that you're not in control and you don't know what's going to happen?" I said, "Yeah, a bit like that." And he goes, "Yeah, son, what I want you to do is when you go back to school," he goes, "I want you to stop and think about, your grandmother. I want you to think about, I want you to think about our family. I want you to think about our people and everything they've gone through for you to be where you are today. And what you have to do is you have to show these kids not only who you are, not who your family are, but who Aboriginal people are in general. Because, I've no doubt that the reason why these kids are saying these things at school is because the only Aboriginal people they ever see or interact with are the ones in the news with the negative stereotypes." I'm like, "Oh, okay," not really understanding what he said. He said, "What I want you to do is when you go back to school is just not say anything back." And he goes, "I promise you after 2 weeks it'll stop. And then, your teachers will stop yelling at you. You'll get a better report card, and your parents will send you to Japan." And that's what I heard at the end. "Your parents send you to Japan, just don't say anything back. Done. Sweet." So I go back to school. Sure enough, my the first 2 weeks were so hard, but then it sort of stopped towards the end of the second week. And then, by the end of the 4th week, Daniel and I actually sort of got along a bit. Some of the class weren't arguing at all. And then, the end of that term, my report card was significantly different, which was, the pleasure of my parents. But Daniel and I actually started becoming friends for Cairns before school, started talking a bit, and he invited me to his party at the end of the year. So I got invited to my first high school party at the end of year 9, which I was really excited about. So I told my parents, said, "Oh, Mum, Dad, I'm going to a party." She goes, "Oh, where are you going?" I said, "Oh, we're going to meet at a park near school, and then we're going to go to someone's house." My parents laughed. Said, "Oh yeah, have fun at the park." I didn't really get what that meant. I got to the park, and all it was just teenagers drinking there. And I made the conscious decision, I think, because of my interaction with kids at school, that I didn't have a drop of alcohol until I was 22. So I remember I lasted at the park for about 20 minutes. Like, "Oh, where's the party at?" They said, "Oh, this is the party." So I went home, and my parents laughed. "Oh, how was the park?" "Oh, shit, everyone was drinking." I said, "Yeah, welcome to being a teenager." So I didn't go to many high school parties as a teenager, but that was all right. But that's sort of what I want to share. That story is that interaction. I'm really thankful that I have my grandfather and also the men in my family, to the point where I was able to combat racism at school, with the support that I had with my family. To where Daniel's one of my best mates. I was actually a groomsman at his wedding a couple of years ago, at the Bucks party. He's like, "Man, I can't believe we used to fight us." So we didn't fight. You got cheeky, wasn't a basher. I know my mates. He started laughing. But I'm really thankful in the fact that, I had support around me to enable me to be able to sort of break stereotypes, not only for myself, but how people think of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And I think it's really, really important that weeks like NAIDOC Week and organisations like the IMAA, you guys do what you do, to help change those stereotypes as well. And that's sort of what I want to share with you guys, Aboriginal Health Television. I know we're running short on time, but I'll be able to get through, a lot of the slides. Sam, if we'll be able to go to the next slide, please, which will be a video, sort of just a highlight reel of AHTV.
So stay at school, you young mom.
Cool. Thank you very much. Hopefully it goes over to the next slide, but as technology really isn't on our side today, but as it's happening, I'll share. So obviously, you guys are aware that, Seb and I, represent Tonic Media Network, and I sort of head up Aboriginal Television, which is a subsidiary of the Tonic Media Network. And sort of Aboriginal Television, sort of give you a quick update, sort of quick overview is government initiative, which Tonic applied for a government grant in 2018 for every single Aboriginal community-controlled health organisation, ACTO or AMS, to have a screen and media player which play culturally relevant content at that point of care for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. If we could please go to the next slide. The ethos for AHTV is live healthy, live strong, and live long. AHTV is fast becoming the most effective way to deliver any content you want to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members. The reason being the locations in which they sit, 100% the people in the waiting area are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We have a footprint of around 500,000 people per month who do go to the AMS or Aboriginal Community Controlled Health organisation. If we go to the next slide, please. The story for AHTV, as we said, the grant was given to Tonic in July of 2018. But I joined the network or the business in September, which I was really excited, to build the whole network, from its infancy to where it is now, which I'm really, really proud of. So we began the rollout of screens of August of 2018, and the network launched on in January of 2019 over in Bunbury, WA. By August of 2019, we had 100 of the 300 Aboriginal community controlled health organisations join the network. In February of 2020, we had 200, which is really, really great. And the sweet spot for us is 250. We hover around that at the moment, 250 sites nationally, which is really, really great. And, due to the demand, that AHTV had by the communities, and also, the ACTOs for screens, going back to the grant that was awarded to the network, it was for one screen and one media player to each medical service, where in actual fact, ACTOs are so sophisticated in the way they operate and deliver, healthcare to communities that most of the time they have more than one waiting area. So I'll give an example of the Redfern Aboriginal Medical Service here in Sydney. They have 5 different waiting areas, sort of 5 different sort of health areas. So they've got the general practice, a dental, an eye health clinic, a mums and bubs clinic, and also essentially an STI clinic as well. So we have those 5 different waiting areas. So 5 different ways we can reach the community through there. So that's sort of how AHTV sort of works and operates through the communities, which is really, really great and important, I think, to note. And through March of 2021, it's really hard. Some of these dates are hard for me to remember because COVID's sort of thrown everything out. You guys might have that as well, but we had an independent evaluation of the network, which is really, really great. Sort of a lot of the feedback, which the numbers will share with you, came back that a lot of the community members did find the content culturally relevant important. They were able to act upon that. If we go to the next slide, please. So the reach of AHTV, as I said, sort of it's grown a little bit since this slide was done. So we're at 240 sites across the country, which is really, really good. And we're about to partner with WA Country Health, which is good. So you'll see through Western Australia, sort of a big sort of empty space through the Wheatbelt region. There's no community controlled health organisations through there. They're actually run by WA Country Health and have 3 different hospitals. So we're really, really excited to be able to sort of support Aboriginal communities through the Wheatbelt district and being able to have, culturally relevant, important health messaging at that point of care. So the leadership for AHTV, really, really proud to have, Aboriginal Australia's leading health clinicians, researchers and health service providers actually, provide cultural support. I lean on those guys quite a bit through the year and, some of the questions and sticky stuff that I may have, with with the network, any piece of content that does come through, whether it's a commercial piece or from the government, I'll view that. Now, if I have any qualms or any worries about not being culturally safe or culturally relevant, I'll lean on the different the different advisory group members, which is really, really great. Next slide, please. So really quickly, I'll go through the advisory group list. So we've got Professor Sandra Eads. She is the Dean of Medicine at Curtin University. We've then got Donna Archie. She's the CEO of the Central Australian Aboriginal Congress. So they look after all the sites across Central Australia. If they have any qualms, if they don't have any issues with the cultural relevancy of the content, then it's fine everywhere else, because they still have a lot of the segregated waiting areas of female and male waiting areas because of, cultural reasons. We've then got Associate Professor Dr. Chris Lawrence. He heads up, the Centre, the Indigenous Centre for Technology and Research at UTS. We've then got Dr. Mark Wenetong. He lays claim to being the first Aboriginal doctor, and he sits on a lot of boards as well. And then we've lastly got Adrian Carson. He's the CEO of the Institute of Urban Indigenous Health, and they run one of the largest, Aboriginal practices across the country. They've got 30 across Southeast Queensland. He also heads up an organisation called Deadly Choices, which is really, really great as well. So we can go to the last bit. I think you guys are pretty familiar with how sort of, digital out-of-home media runs, and AHTV mirrors the Tonic Media Network on My Doctor and how their content runs. So we have the NITV news at the top of each day, at the top of each hour rather, and then we've sort of got all the content pillars sort of segregated. So we do have federally funded content from the government, which is great, and then we've got sort of a lot of our community, community content which comes from the ABC and NITV. Stuff like On Country Kitchen and Bush Mechanics, but where I think, where AHTV is able to create the most changes through, the geo-targeting aspect, where we're able to get every single actor that signs up, they get 2 minutes per hour to create, produce and upload content to their own community. And that's where we allow sort of our commercial partners to do so as well. If we go to the next slide, please. So this one really quickly, you can change this one already. That's just sort of an example of the content that we play. So we're going to send this out to you guys after. You guys will be able to view some of that content as well. Thanks for that, Sam. We can go to the next one. So we'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes, but just to finish up, just some of the results that we received. This is from the Nielsen survey last year. So just wanted to highlight the number of people actually. Yeah, so I'm getting notes coming in, but sort of just, I'll send these through to you. We'll sort of just go through one or two more slides and we'll go to questions, but sort of all of the data here that we've got sort of showcase that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander visit the doctor much more than non-Aboriginal Australians. I can attest that on a personal level, that I go to the doctor at least once a month. And when I go, I'm 33 with my own family, but my mum or my auntie will still come with me 9 times out of 10. A, because they want to see other community members, or B, some of our family work there. It's just a good opportunity for our people to come together. So, it's not a place that just our people go to when they're sick. It's an opportunity for us to come together. So if you want to go, we can go down to, just go to the next slide. Cool. So, and these last couple of slides here, which I won't touch too much on because I know we're running short of time, but the evaluation of Aboriginal television was conducted in 2021. And the 3 key areas that we had was cultural appropriateness and relevancy, the engagement and acceptance, and also health literacy. And all of those results that came